Hi, hello again, and thank you very much for joining this year's Asia Smart City Conference, 11th year's conference. So at this final session, I'd like to wrap up this year's discussion for today, which take place from 1 o'clock of Japan time until now with Bindu. Bindu is a special advisor to Whiteboard Center, but he was managing director of ADB, and he's kind enough to be an advisor to us, in addition to his wide range of advisory and promoting role he has right now. He's coming from Kathmandu, I believe. And also that with us, Mary Jane Ortega. Mary Jane is also the special advisor to us. And also at the same time, she used to be the mayor. She is a practitioner and a deep thinker, being a mayor of San Fernando, La Union, the Philippines, and also the Secretary General for a CityNet, a city-to-city collaboration network. So before getting the comments from these two distinguished advisors, I'd like to wrap up briefly about the session we had. We had 3 sessions, starting with effective measures towards the net zero future in Asia and the Pacific. The session was moderated by Asia Development Bank Institute, Ms. Pichaya, and also that the case of Bangkok, Thailand, and Makassar, Indonesia, and also the Yokohama was presented as a carbon neutrality year as a long-term city management target and the practical tools to move forward all the resources we have targeting some outcome which is beneficial for all. And in this session, I observed that the importance of mobilizing all the resources the city has, private sector participation, and also to take a look at the city management from the point of investment, like a city management, city finance as a portfolio. And it was presented by the new ADB program, Investable Cities. And finally, that the intercity collaboration was also emphasized in this session. The second session, which is a theme of the city operation through utilization of voluntary local review and well-being city evaluation indicators, was moderated by Ms. Kataoka of Institute of Global Environmental Strategies. And in this discussion, that the voluntary record review cases of SDGs was presented through the Yokohama case, and also that Ms. Kataoka summarized that VLR for other parts of the world and in a general perspective. And also it was very interesting that Mr. Nagumo, who is leading Smart City Initiative Japan, presented us well-being indexes, and also that he analyzed Yokohama as a case to make sure that this kind of indexes and also that review can benefit as a city management tool. And also that we had a participation from Dana and a presentation on their smart cities, carbon neutrality, city management from the perspective of Vietnam was presented in a very effective way. Final session was on designing agile cities for greater livability. The session was moderated by Mr. Chris Pablo of World Bank, Tokyo Development Learning Center, and also that there was a participation on the case of Croatia, and also that we had a global perspective of smart cities, and a very practical case presentation in Yokohama and Singapore with a different flavor on the case presentation by Yokohama was on the already built up cases, and then that the Singaporean cases was more of the future development with a very, very high cutting edge technology. And thank you very much for all this very rich presentation, and also thank you again for all the participants, who are with us until the end of today's session. So I'd like to go with Mary Jane first. What's your observation for today's discussion, which took place in this Smart City Conference?
Thank you very much, Toru-san. First, I would like to tell everybody I met Toru when he was with the World Bank. And I had the advantage of having this cooperation with the World Bank. And I was surprised that when I became Secretary General in CityNet, when Yokohama was hosting CityNet, he was also then with the city of Yokohama. But I would also like to thank the mayor, Mayor Takeharu Yamanaka, although I have not met him personally because of COVID. Well, he has extended our appointment as special advisor. And most importantly, I'd like to also congratulate all the organizers of the 11th ASCC. Now, Toru-san mentioned that I was a former mayor of the city of San Fernando in the Philippines. It's a very small city, so you would call it an S, a South city. It's still a developing city. And I was the first city mayor of that city. It was only a municipality. And I really learned about the advantages of city-to-city cooperation. When you see a developed city like Yokohama, and you can see how they have developed after the war and become the city that is a model and helping others, then we said we should also probably help others. And so it has become also a practice, not only to go into a city-to-city cooperation, but even to go into a triangular cooperation of cities, with Yokohama as the north developed city, and then coming up with two other cities. And we have heard today that Yokohama has had this very good program with Da Nang and Bangkok. And so this is really a model of a triangular cooperation. But it's not enough to just cooperate with three cities. We need institutions like World Bank, the ADB, JICA, IGES, all the other institutions that can help us achieve our goals. And in fact, it's not even enough to have triangular or rectangular. I am reminded, I was listening to Alfonso Vergara earlier, and he has always been talking about his diamond city. Well, here we would have the the stars with so many sparkles, or also a diamond, perhaps, when you have a multi-sectoral governance approach to development of the city. And when we do this, we are accomplishing SDG 17 to do all the goals that we want to achieve from SDG 1 to 16, and it can only be achieved through partnerships and networking, such as the ASCC. And how do we do it? We've heard it all from the experts. And I was just saying, now we have seen how Yokohama has continued with this cooperation in spite of COVID. And it is because of the digital world. We can do it virtually. I miss going to Yokohama, by the way, and see it personally, but it's also very good to still keep in touch, even if it is virtually. So thank you, ASCC.
Thank you, Mary Jane. So, Bindu, what's your observation through the discussion for today's sessions? Do you have what's your thought on it?
Well, thank you, Toru. Thank you, Mary Jane. Always nice to see you all. Let me make 3 points after listening a little bit of yesterday, a little bit of today. One, everybody's agreed on the carbon neutral city, except a few countries. By 2050, China says 2060, India says 27, and many other countries said they would even do before. So we have a really agreement among the countries that we go for carbon neutral, net zero emissions by 2050. I mean, there's nothing to be discussed on that. In the context of city, therefore, in my view, many cities have also made a commitment to be carbon neutral by 2050. Yokohama is one, and there are many others that we know. So therefore, at this point in time, when this agenda is on the table, I personally feel, and have spoken about in many places, that we need now a long-term plan 2050, if you call it by 2050 a long-term plan. How do you get there? So city needs a long-term 2050 plan. And city also needs a medium-term plan, which is City 2030. 2030, by that time, we want to reduce the emissions by half. And 2030, we also want to be committing to the SDG, which is SDG 2030. Now, in order to do this, I think there's a lot of rethinking that is needed in the cities, which has to happen. And I have personally seen and felt that in this kind of exercise, learning from cities, other cities, how they have done it, again, under the city-to-city collaboration, I think this would be one of the activities where some countries which have done or which have already figured out how to do could help to the countries who are thinking of doing it in future. So Yokohama, in my opinion, could be like a role model. But I do remember many years ago, Mary Jane would remember our then mayor saying it, I want to be carbon neutral by 2050. So Toru, you know that. So this itself is a city-to-city collaboration and a help. And not many cities that I know have a net zero 2050 plan or a 2030 plan at all. So a medium, let me call medium and long term. And as I said, it'll need some thinking change, and that would be a longer term. I say this is a longer term city-to-city collaboration. We're talking about 2030 and 20, not for 1 year, 2 years. That is one thing good about this city-city collaboration. Number two, cities are where there will be a lot of investment needs. Now, Toru, you mentioned Yokohama has already so much built up cases, and Singapore will have a lot of new built up cases. But one thing I have seen, and you will know it, is how to make these cities resilient. Some of the things, some of the infrastructures we had built in the past, they did not take into account the impact of the climate change because 20, 30 years, because infrastructure projects last for 40, 50, even more years. So if they have not taken into account the climate change, and there are many cities that I know, where such infrastructure has not, and there could be therefore flooding, et cetera, we need to retrofit. This needs a lot of investment. As an infrastructure person one time, I can tell you need a lot of money. That's why your resource mobilization angle is good for retrofitting. But before even you can spend it, you need to have lots of studies on what will happen, what kind of adaptation, climate proofing would be required, and the money requirement is huge. That's why we need to try to mobilize all sort of grants, et cetera, which you mentioned ADB. I was listening to 2021, and next week I would be going to Bangkok. They are thinking how to make water resilient in the city, for example. Lots of the drainage, the water supply system were designed, they didn't take into account the climate ideas. You will need lots of flooding, just to give an example. So making a resilient city and the investment need for that, resources need for that will become important. And this kind of knowledge could be shared between the cities which have already retrofitted, beginning to do it. I know Singapore has done some, maybe Yokohama might have done, there may be others. We need to collect that and make a city-city collaboration in that. The third point is that I always say this is the ICT and tech. ICT from the digital, which Mary Jane referred already. We saw that during the pandemic, how useful was digital technology in terms of e-commerce, food delivery, you name it, right? Everything was so much easier because of it. And this has not stopped. This has continued to become more and more. And I think the ICT's power to make services even better in the cities should be looked into, because cities, dynamics of the cities are changing all the time. I say this is like a laboratory changing, way of life is changing, ways of doing business changing, transportation is changing. So we need to constantly try to see how smartly we can use these available or new technologies that come in to make the services better. Data is already available so much today to do that. And the technology side is we're gonna need lots of new technologies which are available will continue to be available, innovative, both for water, energy, transport, etc. I'm not going to elaborate, but they will be used for efficiency and effectiveness. Now, sometimes the developing countries think this is having the best technologies in the beginning may be costly, and therefore we need to do some life cycle analysis. They may be expensive in the beginning, but that if you look at the whole life cycle, taking into account all the operation, maintenance, replacement, they could become even cheaper. If not cheaper, there are now multilaterals who could pick up this difference because of the carbon to make it, because low carbon technologies, because there is not yet pricing on the carbon in all the cities. So I think that, so I would like to suggest that the city-city collaboration thinking would be adopt, adapt, and leapfrog thinking in the technology side. Adopt means if something is good, like Yokohama is doing it, which I haven't done it in my city, in Kathmandu, and if it's good, just take it. Adopt as it is, shamelessly take it and say, please help me. If you need to adapt a little bit because of my local condition of weather or culture or whatever it is, I would say, okay, please help me, but I will use my local knowledge to adapt it. And if it is so old that you should be forgetting about this and leapfrog into the new technology, which is available already, just leapfrog it and go and get it done so that we will not be behind. So these are all good city collaboration issues. In my opinion, I told you I'll do in 5 minutes, and that's my 5 minutes.
All right, thanks, Bindu. So that if I may wrap up based on two input I have today. First, that needless to say, city-to-city collaboration has a lot of benefit, so we have to enhance it. And I think it is even more important that country-to-country conflict looks like increasing. So that in that sense, that civil society, city to city, learning, collaborating, adapting, co-creating a new innovation is becoming more important. And also, I think Mary Jane did very well to mobilize all the resources, civil society, and even the private sector, financing, participation into the urban service provider. There's no need. I think we have to really emphasize that the city has to mobilize all the resources so that city government should not be the only source of a service provider. Third, I think this becoming very strongly in this year's conference is that carbon neutrality. Yes, the Da Nang and the Bangkok with whom we are collaborating declared 2050 net zero. Yeah, and also the 2030 half. These are the commitment which become very, very significant. And at the same time, I think this can be utilized to mobilize the resources by many sectors to achieve these goals. The fourth, resiliency. Yes, I think the recent COP emphasized the importance to create a new fund to mitigate disaster, right? Yeah, that natural disaster is really, I think, become more of the significance these years. But at the same time, very, very unfortunately, human-created disaster is also another issue, which we have but to face these days. Lastly, that ICT leapfrog a new technology to enhance these all four elements, becoming more important element at today's era. I recently visited Barcelona for the Smart City Expo. To that conference, Mayor of Kiev, former heavyweight class champion, came over to make a very strong presentation in which, under the attack by Russia and a very difficult situation, that connection through the smartphone and social network has lots of benefit to share the citizen where to get the services, how the transportation are moving, and also that immediately report the damage created by the attack to the city government. And it was really well presented. I'm not so sure if this presentation is up on the website. I think it will be very soon. If not, that I suggest everyone was looking at, even in this kind of very extreme situation, networking can create a lot of benefit too. All right, so that we have just 2 minutes to close. So Mary Jane and Bindu, do you have a last word? You have 45 seconds each.
Well, I should also like to share that I brought my grandchildren to one of the Asia's ASCC in the past, and they were still students. And you know that now they're so committed to how we should come up with carbon neutrality, how to use technology. And so let us not forget the youth, and let us use social media to attract them, because they will be the leaders of tomorrow.
Yes, the future generation, how to involve the young, still active generation, right? I think that's more.
Even senior citizens are still active, Toru-san.
Yeah, of course. I'm not saying we are not. We are still, but I think we need to get more infusion of a new energy. Bindu, how about you?
Well, thank you very much. In short time, looks like you've really got some very significant outcome, very focused, which is good. That means we have a lot of work to do, continue to do a lot of work for ASC in the future to help the countries in the Asia Pacific region. And finally, on the youth, as you said, there's a lot of, in one keynote I had to say, like one youth asked me, when should I be involved in something like 250? That's exactly the region you should be. I said, by 250, I will not be there, but you will be. So it's going to be your agenda. Make sure that we do a good job now. Keep on pressing us, but please take it over, because it's going to be your agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So I'd like to really close this year's conference. But looking back the first day, this year's conference was really started by kickoff event of the university students presentation. Of course, professionally, it's not there yet, but I think it has a lot of significant meaning, implication to this year's conference, I believe. All right, thank you again, all the participants. And this year we did this conference 100% online only, but the COVID may be with us continuously, but traffic across the border started again. So I hope the next year we would like to organize this conference in a real term. And so I hope to see you all in Yokohama. With this, I'd like to conclude this year's conference. Thank you very much.
Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Dr. Rohani, Ms. Ortega, and Mr. Hashimoto, thank you very much for your valuable comments. With these words, I'm pleased to announce the end of the 11th Asian Smart City Conference, the new urban development that enables sustainable growth through public-private partnership. Please be reminded that the Secretariat of ASCC will be circulating a survey for the participants via email. We appreciate your cooperation to fill in a survey to provide a richer experience in the near future. Thank you very much again for joining the conference today. See you soon. Bye.